Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more session of the Dairy Technology Tuesdays webinar series hosted by Cornell and prepared by Cornell Cooperative Extension Statewide Dairy Specialists and Cornell Pro Dairy. My name is Camila Lage, and I work as a dairy management specialist for the Cornell Cooperative Extension Southwest New York team. And before we start, I would like to thank you for our sponsors, whom we were seeing on the slides leading to the presentation now. With their generous support, we are able to provide this program at no cost. And in today's program, we are going to have two speakers giving a 25-minute back-to-back presentation. And after all of the two presentations, we will have a Q&A session in which both speakers will answer the questions you might have. So during the whole program, make sure you add your questions to the Q&A box, and we are going to make sure to answer all of them in the end of the program. I also want to remind everyone that the recordings of all presentations will be available on February 28th on the Pro Dairy webpage and YouTube channels. So if you want to view, rewatch, or share these resources after we are done with the webinar series, that's where you would go to find them. So with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker for this session. Dr. Larry Tranel is an extension and outreach specialist for Iowa State University and will be presenting From Robots to Low-Cost Parlors, How Do You Milk a Cow? So I see your screen is shared, and with that, you can take it over. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. So yeah, have a lot of experience just working with low-cost parlors and robotic milking systems and a lot of milking systems in between. So I'm going to just kind of go through a bit about I'm having a hard time moving my cursor here. There we go. So just evaluating technology on the farm. So we work with a lot of farmers that may be extremely high tech, some that might be pretty low tech, and anything in between here. So here's an Amish farmer just taking a look at a lot of different types of technologies that they might have even on their farms. When we take a look at different milking systems, one of the slides I tend to like is this one here, where we kind of cross comparing the capital and just the annual costs, and in addition to the labor cost of different types of systems, going all the way from a stall barn all the way to robotic milking. And I think one of the things we tend to find over time is that there's different types of systems that have different costs to them, and there can be a lot of variability within each one of these systems, what their costs might be. But a tie stall barn, I've seen them anywhere from $1.25 to $1.75 per hundredweight. They actually can be quite expensive as a means to milking cows. And on the flip side, with the robotic milking systems, the AMSs, the automatic milking systems, I've seen those actually come down. It seems like in cost when you start taking a look at $2 to $250 per hundredweight. So when you take a look at our low-cost milking parlors, they tend to be the lower cost ones to work with, but they're not for everybody. And so there's different places where they can actually fit quite well, and we'll try to go through there. If I was going to take a look at a lot of these various systems, it's a very busy slide, but basically it kind of points down to stall barn milking can actually be one of the more expensive ways to milk cows, actually very competitive with the robot. And I've seen some of the robots, like I said, be maybe down to even $1.75, and the stall barns being up to $1.75 per hundredweight. So if you use that kind of as a metric, as a cost of production, or at least cost for milking cows, I think it's kind of an important thing to realize that it really depends on a lot of different factors and how efficient each one of these systems is to make an educated decision which ones might be best for our farm. So when we took a look at some data from Wisconsin back even in the 1990s, just after the yellow ones are basically after they remodeled their system or built a new system, is that there were quite a few farms that were getting their milking efficiencies in cows per person per hour, some even over 100 cows per hour. But yet the sad thing is that a lot of them, even after they remodeled, they still didn't have efficiencies were that much better than quite a few people even before they remodeled. And so I think it's important for us to realize how important milking efficiency, that labor efficiency, is to the profitability of the dairy farms. And that's kind of what we're kind of going after today with some of these technologies that can help the labor efficiency itself. So if we take a look at cows milk per person per hour from 22 to 44 to 66, we've got people out there that are milking 80, 90, even 100 cows per person per hour. And you break that down with labor rates nowadays that could even be higher than what we have in here. That per unit cost per hundredweight can actually be quite different from some other ones. So if we take a look at even on the bottom down there where we've got a robot that might be milking, say, a throughput of 4,500 pounds per cow per day. So the labor cost of that is actually quite low, but you definitely have some investment costs on that as well. So the labor efficiency with the robots is kind of a different situation there. So what's the best way to milk me? And when we take a look at the robots, this is just a quote from Ben Freund. When we take a look at just how they can unleash some cow restraints, the first robotic milker we actually put here in Iowa, it actually increased the milk production of the herd by over 20 pounds. And that's all they really did was to put the robot in. So it can actually unleash not just some cow constraints, but some facility constraints that people might have, or bottleneck systems they might have within their system. It definitely magnifies the labor and the ability to milk more cows per person. It's a tool, not a solution. And just that financial cost and what that is versus the milking labor. And hopefully we'll have time to actually go through a partial budget on that as well. So when we take a look at low-cost parlors, they can actually look quite expensive. They can actually look quite nice. This is a Parabone Swing 20 parlor that sits in Southwest Wisconsin. That milks somewhere between 75 to 80 cows per person per hour. They have 2 people in the pit, so they're typically getting around 145 to 150 cows per person per hour of milk through this system. So this one actually is a rapid exit. So these low-cost parlors can be swing over type parlors. They can be doubled up parlors. They can be rapid exit. They can be all in from one side, the leader follower type system. So we can have a lot of different situations that we have, but we definitely want something that's efficient, that's safe and comfortable, and that's ergonomically correct to milk in. And I think those are 3 big factors that we try to put in these low-cost parlors. So there's some things on the internet, the websites that we can actually get to. Maybe I can actually get the publication while Nancy's talking. I can try to get that to somebody that they can actually list it so they can kind of figure out where that is. But basically, it's a very simple design on it. There's not a lot of stall work. A lot of farmers actually build these parlors themselves. Personally, I've actually built about 8 or 10, maybe even 12 of these over the course of my career. But they're in many of the states, if not most of the states at this point. But definitely a very efficient way to milk system. And our goal is to help people that at minimum you're milking 64 cows per person per hour, but hopefully you can get that into 75 and even 80. So they can look a lot of different ways. You might have a splash guard. You might not have a manure pan. I tend to like those just because my propensity to get manure on my face is not very high. Some people actually feed in these parlors, but they can be very efficient parlors with some pretty good milk production averages as well. There definitely is a lot of safety factors with a lot of different types of milking parlors. And so we can actually misdesign parlors. So case in point is in this parlor, I would sure like to have this kick rail actually down right here so these cows or these kids can actually get kicked in the parlor. But a lot of different things about cow visibility and things like that we can to work with. So this is actually a video I want to kind of show about a low-cost parlor. This is probably one of our most efficient ones. This one person milks in a swing 15, and they're probably milking about 75 to 80 cows per person per hour on any given time frame. But basically, they're going to prep 5, and then they're going to attach 5, and they've got a if you can see right here, they've actually got a button. They've got a button back here, and basically they actually have the crowd gate coming. So the goal is with these low-cost parlors is that the person shall not get out of the pit. And it's kind of a training thing is that usually when I do milking parlor analysis, the first thing I got to do is just why is everybody getting out of the pit? Okay, these cows get trained to people going up and get them all the time. And so how do we devise a system where we can just let these cows flow in? So bottom line is that they should be milking these first 4 cows before this line is even filled. Most people seem like they want to fill the thing up, shut the gate, and then start milking their cows, which is really kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit labor efficiency wise. And so again, just to make sure that when we take a look at a low cost parlor, it can look extremely nice. It can be extremely efficient as any other parlor. But again, safety and ergonomics are 2 big things that I see mismanaged in a lot of milking parlors. So when we take a look at the man hours with this, and so I just doubled up the video here, so I apologize for that. This is actually a little video of a chop gate. So when I take a look at, and I'm not sure how to get the voice off of that, so I'll just try to talk over it, but it's just the gate that allows cows that haven't been milked and cows that have been milked to enter and leave at the same time, and which really increases the efficiency. So this is a piece that I'll probably put up against rapid exit. So everybody talks about rapid exit being so fast. I can usually get cows in and out of the parlor just as fast in this kind of a leader follower system. And I've seen that in different countries around the world as well, and had it demonstrated to me that that's a system that I think is a very undersold piece of equipment in the dairy industry itself. So this is what I call the 45-second drill. And so bottom line, without anybody getting out of the pit, how do these cows enter and leave? And I just wanted to show this real quickly, because so people can actually see the crowd gate actually working as these 8 cows. And this is a smaller parlor. And these low-cost parlors seem like they tend to work better the longer they are with the more cows. So the double 16s or the swing 16s and the swing 20s tend to be what people are tending to put in nowadays versus the smaller ones, unless we get a really small herd to work with. So that's the chop gate in action. When we take a look at, for some reason, that one got doubled up as well. So a lot of old parlors that we have around the country, you had a lot of old stall barns. We can make them into some pretty nice parlors. This is an old stall barn that was pretty, not very well lit, not very nice of a parlor, stall barn, but we actually created a very nice parlor in the situation and very high throughput with this one as well. When we take a look at robotic milking, there's definitely some options with rotary robots and with single box type robots. And I've had the experience, I was actually involved with the first one that came in here to Iowa, and been working with the economics of robotic milking ever since, and just a lot of different good options with the robots, I tend to think. And so when a lot of people are putting in robots, we talk about the cost of the newer parlors and things like that. And I tend to say that most of the interest that people who come to me anyway are looking at either the low cost option with the robot or with the low cost parlor, or they're looking at the robots. Okay, so if I'm going to put in a pretty expensive parlor, my thought process and the thought process of a lot of the colleagues would basically say, if we're going to spend that much money on it, why not just put the robots in? When we take a look at just comparing like 2 robotic milking systems versus a retrofit swing 12, again, the cost of doing business for the whole milking phase tends to be about half for the low cost parlor on a per hundredweight basis. And so it's kind of a producer preferential. Do they like the robots? Because some people like working with them, but the bottom line is it really depends on labor availability. And I would tend to say probably well over half of the robots that are going in may not make the most financial sense compared to something else, but with labor availability, that's kind of their preference, just because they have a hard time bringing the labor on or keeping the labor around. When people take a look at evaluating the robots financially, it really is a big question, because it really depends on, are we talking profitability? Are we talking cash flow? And there's so many people out there, even some bankers, that don't understand there's a huge difference between profitability and cash flow. And so one of the biggest things about robots is that you might be on a 7-year note, so you're kind of paying for your labor for the next 15 years, but you got to pay for the robot in 7 years. Okay, but after that, the cash flow might be quite good, just because now we've got that investment paid for in that 7 years, and we've got the next 8 years to kind of work off of that. So we did surveys in 2012 in Iowa. We also did them in 2017. So when basically taking a look at just a couple of things, that in 2012, it basically said that they were milking about 12% more cows with a 75% decrease in labor, which is huge. And in 2017, they were milking 33% more cows with a 55% decrease in labor. Again, both of those are highly significant decreases of labor. And I think it's even a more percent decrease in labor than what a lot of other surveys or some research is actually showing that people get on the robotic milking side of things. So milk production is definitely a big part of that increase when you take a look at the profitability, and without that increase, but we've actually had a couple of farmers that they don't care even if they get a milk production increase, just it's a labor issue that they need to take care of, and so they put the robots in. From the farmer perspectives, the labor availability, the flexibility, the quality of life, and some other reasons that they want to try to put the robots in, definitely very important reasons. But after the fact, in both of these surveys, that 100% of them agree that the robot's been a good financial investment, a good personal investment, good management investment, and also a good overall investment. But we did not survey the ones that actually sold the robots, where the robots just didn't seem to pan out, and whatever the issues were, that the reasons why they did not pan out. So this is one in Spain that I just always kind of like to show this one, because this guy, after about 13, 14 years, the robots were pretty well done for. And he was just kind of saying to the fact that, you know, if I would have just put the parlor in 13 years ago, I wouldn't be faced with this $1 million decision again. So that's just kind of something I like to kind of throw out in people's minds. It really depends on where you're at in your career. And if you only got about 5 years left in the dairy career, the robots might not be the best idea. I'm not saying they wouldn't be a good idea, but they might not be the best idea for you as well. So I'm going to spend the next piece of the time just kind of going through a partial budget of what robotic milking systems might be in comparison. And I think one of the biggest things we take a look at, it really depends on what you compare it to. So if I compare a robot to a stall barn system, I think the robot's going to beat it out most times just because of that labor cost, and especially if we're keeping track of what the labor actually is in that stall barn. If I compare it to a low-cost parlor, the robot's going to have a hard time beating that. If I compare it to a medium cost or a high cost parlor, the robot's going to be extremely competitive for a total cost factor. But again, that labor issue is a big piece of it. So I've got a few variables in here that I'm not going to take the time to read, but some milk prices, the cost of robots, and there's definitely some variation in what those cost depending on company and also depending on type. The repair cost part of that tends to be the biggest variable. Maybe I shouldn't say the biggest one, but a very big one. And this range has actually gotten into even $16,000 per robot in certain herds that we've surveyed. So the number of robots, there's 3. The years of useful life, I'm still going with about 15, sometimes up to 17. And I still feel very comfortable about that. The value of the robot, the interest rate on money, the insurance value, and the just a couple of things that we're going to take a look at with what the robot is compared to what the milking parlor might be. So here's the repair costs where we did the survey, where the max repair cost was about $16,500, even though the average was only about $75. And so that repair cost is highly variable from the early part of the robot to the later part of the robot as well. One thing the survey really showed up is just that some producers just couldn't imagine how much teat dip they actually went through with the robots. And I've been on quite a few robotic installations across the country, and every time I get called in for a milk quality issue on one of them, the first thing I'm going to do is just check to make sure all 4 teats on most cows are getting dipped. And I get into a lot of situations where it might be 1 teat, it might be 2 teats, and sometimes you're lucky if all 4 teats are actually being dipped with some of the dippers that are actually dipping cows on the robots. So some of the other things with labor changes, going from 14 hours a day down to 5.3 hours per day. Heat detection changes, record management, labor management, and a few things like that. So you can kind of see some of the variables that we're playing with. Pounds of milk. So typically we'll be looking at maybe a 10% increase. We'll for sure give a 3 to 5% increase. We've only had a couple that actually decreased in milk production, and those were 3X herds that actually went to the robot. So when you go to a robot, it's not going to be a true 3X milking with each cow getting milked, 3 times a day on 8-hour shifts. And so you got some variability with it. So it's not true 3X, but most that are 2X going to a robot are going to see some pretty happy gains, I would suspect, with that. When you take a look at milk quality, it tends to actually increase over time. Maybe right away it might not. But when we take a look at feed cost changes, so we surveyed a couple of farms and basically found out even the ones that had the same nutritionist on the same farm, there was only about a half a cent per pound of dry matter difference between that robotic ration and the other ration that they're actually working with. And so those feed cost difference on some farms might be pretty substantial, but in a lot of them, it really doesn't change a whole lot. The cost of replacement heifers, really realizing the culling rate is going to go down somewhat. The reasons for culling may change. Utilities and supply changes, those are some variables that are different on everybody's farms. Those are kind of just estimated guesses. So when we take a look at all those variables, we would tend to say that definitely some positive impacts in the increased milk production. When we take a look at decreased expenses, especially the labor, the increase in feed costs, and sometimes half of that milk production increase will actually go back out in feed costs. So we need to kind of be aware of that. So when we take a look at positive impacts at 174,000, the negative impacts 172. So with this 3 robotic milking system, the net financial impact was almost a break even, positive 1472 with that. So that's kind of a partial budget to take a look at that. I've also got one of these for the low cost parlors as well, as you're trying to compare a low cost parlor to something else. So we can kind of go through the same process with the variables. So one of the bigger things I think that people need to realize that when we take a look at robots, cash flow wise, they may have to pay this loan back in 7 years. So I've got a loan here for 7 years. The total payment on this is $116,000 for the 3 robots at 5.5% interest. And so I want you to remember that number of $116,000, because when we take a look at the capital recovery cost on these robots, was basically about $84,000. So if I look at the depreciation and the interest of this over a 15-year period, that's what it comes out to be. But I need to pay back $116,000 a year to the bank because that's what the loan payments are. So I've got to come up with an extra $32,000 a year that previously I did not have to actually cash out or pay for, and actually to pay for the debt on the robots. So there could also be some labor issues with cash flow as well. And so the heat detection might save quite a bit. The amount that we hired in total might be different. And so if we need to, some of the stuff that we were not paying ourselves for in the first place, and now we have to pay for the robots, we actually have to provide cash to do that. That might be another $11,000 on these. So in total, even though it was a positive profit change on the farm of a positive 1,472, it was actually a negative 42,000 on the cash flow ability of the farm. But again, realize that this is only for the first 7 years. And once this robot gets paid off, this debt does not have to get paid. So the cash flow ability of the farm actually increases in years 8 through 15, if that's the life of the robot. So those are just a couple of the variables and just the thought process of trying to work with in the spreadsheet. Can be made available, or at least to run through it with our producers if they're interested in taking a look at this spreadsheet. And there's been a lot of our Iowa dairy producers that have actually run through this spreadsheet before they actually decide to put their parlors in. So system payback. When we're taking a look at the paybacks on the different types of systems, and this is one on the right here is actually an Instatech, the Astria, one that actually has a robotic arm in the middle and is milking a cow on both sides with a single robotic arm. So there's different types of robots out there as well. So if I could compare this to some of our best low-cost parlors, I mean, I can get some of our best low-cost parlors with paybacks of less than a year. And it's not that difficult to do. And even if there's some ones that have some pretty good bells and whistles to them as well, just because the labor efficiency increases that people tend to see from these low-cost parlors. And whether it be a small herd or a larger herd, these can fit quite well. But we can also look at some pretty good paybacks and paybacks that are actually faster than what we need to pay them back to the bank, which is an important piece of it. But basically, we're going to be looking at these in a little different fashion. So I think I'll kind of stop there. So that's kind of just an introduction and hopefully showing a bunch of pictures about how some of these low-cost parlors might work. And I think we mostly probably have a feel for how the milking parlor or the robots themselves work, but just that economic comparison, I think, is an important piece for people to take a look at with those partial budgets. So I know we're going to save the questions to the end, so I'll just kind of leave it at that.
Thank you, Larry, very much. I think our participants have a lot to think about. And please remind to keep sending your questions to the Q&A box, because as Larry said, we are going to have a Q&A session in the end. So with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Nancy Charlton. Nancy is a dairy management advisor, robotic solutions with DeLaval North America, and we'll be presenting about parlors, rotaries, or robots. What technologies are for me? I can see your screen. I think you just need to. Okay.
Yeah, I just need to put it into presentation mode.
Yes.
And
I'm not seeing your screen. If you can share it again.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay.
Just had a little glitch on my end, so my PowerPoint got shut down. So 1 second.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, slideshow. just having a difficult time. There we go.
Zoom can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, how do I get rid of the, there we go.
I think you just need to open your full screen.
Is it sharing now?
Yes, you're
Okay.
fine. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that. So thank you very much for the invitation today. And I'm proud to represent DeLaval and some field experience along with my colleagues, Parlors, Rotaries, and robots. So there's the basic platforms for milk extraction, but there's more that can go with them. And so what technologies are for you in managing the cows in the 21st century? How can we get data out of these to drive decisions? And what are some of the labor efficiencies that we can gain? So even beyond milk extraction, there are other labor efficiencies involved as you can add technology. So with DeLaval, we too have basic parlors, and we deal through branded dealership channel. So some of the things that Larry talked about, you can see do come branded with DeLaval. And here, you know, we have our swing parlors. It's got a fancy name, MIDI line, but you know, these two can come through our dealership and with these swing arms. If you want to take your footprint and perhaps milk a few more cows, we do have herringbones at different angles. At a 30-degree angle, we too have the parabones, and you can see that the technology can be added. If you prefer more of your traditional herringbone, we do have that as well. And in all these parlors, we are doing traditionally what people have preferred, and that is touching udders, which is a key difference compared to when you add further technology. Our 700 to 1,000 cow herds are looking for something a little more heavy duty, stainless steel. And also these farms have a well-trained staffing where they do like to work in straight parlors. And recently, where I was at a farm where they've gathered up some straight parlor sites and brought them to a brand new rotary, they too experience what it is to change people's habits. The standard parlors are an excellent choice for certain regions, certain people, up to a double 16, a double 20. And here we start to get into competition with the buzzword rotary. Certain parts of North America are real rotary lovers. Others, they're not so common. But what people really like about the rotary is this cow flow. And, you know, Larry talked about the efficiencies that he teaches people in straight parlors, starting the attachment, you know, before the last cow comes in. But here with the rotary, you know, it's very natural. Once these cows are trained, they just walk on for that carousel ride. Parts of the world, they do like to have a little bit of feed, but here in North America, the cows, they go for the carousel ride. They don't need the feed. And based on the people placement, the strip, dip, and wipe procedure starts. You can have people well placed so that they're not, you know, drifting in their protocol as much as maybe a straight parlor. And these efficiencies that Larry was getting at, you know, bottom end 20, 30 cows per person per hour, high end pushing 100. These rotaries really start to challenge that. Now, nothing is for free. And it's these teat sprayer robots that I see out there that are really helping getting up to 200 cows per full-time equivalent in the rotary. Nothing is for free. As you invest in this, you can choose higher or lower different capital costs. The consumables are another aspect of it. And so as we want accuracy, then that comes with a more precise camera. So this teat spray robot is the DeLaval technology. It's on our latest robot. It's on our rotary, and this is where we can really hone in and make sure we dip each teat. Dipping the udder, dipping the legs doesn't really gain us anything in high quality milk. Yeah, and when they do spray, it is 12 to 15 mils. So 15 milliliters is about a half an ounce. So I'm with DeLaval, like where's the buzzword robots? Yeah, so depending on where we are in the world, in North America, robots are 75% of our sales. Depending on the US, the market, milk price, size of farms, we can sell a lot of the conventional, or we can lean towards the robots. What I find, there's some different mindsets. If we're family oriented, we don't want to deal with outside labor, as Larry was talking about. Let's bring the robots in, close the doors, and do everything ourselves. As we creep up to that 500 cows, well, we need to train some employees. And now just remember, we're starting to get into competition with other places that these people can work. We're proud to have some very large, 24 all the way up to 62 robots. And again, this is the large herd, extra large herd structure, and protocols, training are in place. And at the 62 robot, extremely high labor efficiencies. We're constantly working with every aspect to ensure that they are achieving these labor efficiencies. Now, just when you think I've presented everything, the latest that DeLaval has come up with is batch milking, and it's in Europe, Holland and Italy, and recently came to Texas. So I like to think this as an automated parallel parlor. In Texas, we have a large organic farm that will be open during the Dairy Cattle Welfare Conference. We will be having one, as rumor has it, coming to Quebec later this year. Yes, we can feed cows in here. It can be very limited. And of course, there's discussions about, well, if we can bring cows to straight parlors and rotaries without feed, then why do we have to do it here? So the farm in Texas is extremely new, lots on the go there. So stay tuned as to how that shakes out with feed. But that's the milk extraction. So that's just the basis. And again, the milk extraction and the economics of it are at play here. But what else do you want it to do? In all situations, I believe you should pick a platform where you can add more automation, where you have milking point controls, where you have touch screens, where you can take that data and drive further decisions and make sure that one person is doing more with less. It's a given with the robot that you're going to have touch screens, and you should be able to do things and relieving you of the manual pressures, the physical pressures on your body. We all know people with shoulders, knee issues. And so when you move to the robot, how do you take that away? But maybe you need to ramp up, you know, your skill set on what you need to know to run things mechanically. And we all know that one way we want to do more with less, those of us on the farm or off the farm, with our phones, for the good or for the bad, what can it tell us so that I can make a decision and move on to the next item in my busy day. So data is the buzzword. We've produced a lot of it, and we haven't been so good at providing information, which then leads to actions. And for me, this is where the most efficient people want to be and are pushing us to be. So when you do choose an upgrade, a retrofit, a green site, whose platform are you going with? And proud with DeLaval to have DeLaval Delpro, and it is connected to everything that we sell, branded with our name. And as we evolve and grow, yes, how can what comes into Delpro turn into information and lead to actions? We want you to be able to work with our technology to manage by exception. You strip this cow, you see abnormal clots. Okay, you punch in here a one-time sort. Gates are another powerful way to improve labor efficiency. You have that cow waiting for someone to be looked at. The cows can also come pre-sorted, and the gates recognize that as soon as she comes through, she's in a group that is to be sorted for vet check, hoof trimming, or various reasons, vaccinations. So to me, here's the power in ramping up your labor efficiency. It's already a given with robots. We come to it expecting it. Perhaps people are not aware as to how much more labor efficiency we can have with these straight parlors as you grow in numbers. I was surprised at Dairy Cattle Reproductive Council. I'd heard a little bit about what has kind of changed during COVID. And that is, we don't want these cows all locked up waiting for us because it's taking too long for us to get there. They're spending too much time standing. They're not getting back to their stalls, chewing their cud and making more milk. So how can these work with gates and new sort systems to ensure the cows go home and chew their cud and make you more energy corrected milk? Now, milk extraction, milk pays the bills, but we can't get there without health, and health leads to reproduction. So as Jeff Bewley likes to call these Fitbits, I thought that that was my term, but recently at NMC, he liked to use the term Fitbits for our activity and behavior systems. So what is the cow doing behaviorally? What is she doing body condition wise? The buzzwords of change in weight are all nice, but it's really body condition that is driving our conception rates. So if they're losing body condition after calving, that is extremely important. And so how do you go with a platform that maybe you can add these technologies to get that data? The poor old milk meter, it gets left behind as old technology, but it is powerful technology. We think that a milk drop is too late. What about early changes in milk flow? What about more subtle deviations? What about combining that with behavior? What about knowing the trend of the body condition? Now you are more empowered to maybe choose those cows that you need to see, and you can have them waiting there without hiring people that need to be cow people like yourself. So we have the cow behavior. It's a given in North America. These Fitbits should tell us when the cows go up, come into heat, put us on a list. Hey, now we can even put in SOPs. Check the cow, possibly aborted. That takes the pressure off of maybe training people that need to know things that that you're very good at. So we can create SOPs to guide the timing of insemination. Health, cow health indexes, scores are now becoming more popular. Proud at DeLaval that we can bring all this in together along with our milk meter information. And now you can score, sort, and check. And again, just having those cows that that need to be seen by you, and we leave the rest of them alone. And again, these scores, no cow is completely sick or completely healthy. It's always a grade. So we work with our clients to say, hey, let's look at the 5s and above before you leave the barn, or on the sorting session. 4s, you know, we'll see how they do. With very large farms, let's get rid of the 3s and belows. The smaller farms, we can leave 3s on and see what they do over the next few days. But again, having a platform that brings everything together for more insight. I will never, ever be a believer in removing good quality people or traditional hands-on from your operations. The data is just used to help present the cows that these people need to see instead of the traditional lining them all up. So data gets you on your way, information a little further, and then some traditional hands-on is always needed. This technology, we should take a look at it with your farm goals, and those goals will vary depending on each farm. Some of the ones I like to think that we can kind of come around and agree on is health. Our animals must be healthy in the consumer's minds, and we must work very hard to ensure the absolute maximum number of cows are healthy. It's life. Some will get sick. Reproduction. If that cow doesn't calve the next time and come in and peak more, it does help. It does make it difficult to achieve production goals. Production goals are highly variable. Breed, energy corrected milk, the role of milk versus butter fat, and what you want to do with your product. But some form of production should have a goal. And this all leads to the buzzword sustainability. Our dairy community, we want it to be around for a very long time, but some conscious effort has to be made to ensure such will happen. And as we're making these changes, I'm sure if it's 5 years or 15, 20 years could be a little different. But just remember, some crazy ideas today may be standard for the next generation. And here is a cuddle box by Cow Signals. The consumer really wants those new calves to spend more time with the dam. We veterinarians, we want a break for minimizing infection. So how's the compromise? And so just remember, as you make changes on your farm, how long are you in it for the long haul? What do you have to be thinking of what's coming down the pipe? So how do we marry up technology and goals? Well, beyond milk extraction, what can we add so that we can watch for dystocias, get notifications, add cameras on our phone or alerts based on the Fitbit, because we need a healthy calf born. We need a healthy cow to come through the calving period into the transition cow period. Absolutely critical for having cows cycle properly. When they cycle properly, they will respond to synchronization programs much better, or we can start to shift to more natural breedings based on your philosophy. It's one thing to cycle, it's another thing to conceive. But those healthy transition cows, getting that information from your platform is very important. And then the cows can calve out, hit the peaks that you nutritionists and agronomists believe you can achieve. And then you maintain persistency based on nutrition and milking schedules. We can't agree on everything, but one thing I think I'd like to agree on is that we have a goal of healthy pregnant cows that will produce the milk that you want at the quality that you want. And then this should lead to the profitability that's necessary for your farm to be sustainable. So having a platform to work off, I think is key to this. Labor efficiency is key. As we add technology, then we should be able to do more with less. This will be the critical part. So leaving the office, going and doing, the younger generation leaving the pen and paper behind, migrating, moving towards that gadget that's in your hand, and then coming back and having the reports that we need. So whether it's our swing parlor, a standard parlor with a little more heavy duty, the rotaries that the extra large farms love, but even recently in New York, a farm of approximately 500 cows wanting to milk efficiently, twice a day, get in, get out. That's kind of the European/Canadian way. So 32 bale rotaries may have a place if that person needs to come in, milk in a couple of hours, move on to many other tasks in the day. The robots, Larry gave some very good outlines of where or how they can help. My experience with the robot is that the second plus lactation cows really take off in them. They get to come 3 to 4 times what they really want. We don't have those explosive udders. Things are much more, I think, humane, 30 to 40 pounds. You may have to do a little extra work with your first lactation heifers. Just remember, they need to be trained no matter where they go. Tie stalls, yep, they're standing there, but they need to be trained to milk. Parlors, they need to load. They need to be trained to load. And robots, they need to be trained to, hey, I go there and have a good experience. Nothing in this world is for free. And then this whole batch milking concept just taking off in Europe and our first farm here in the US. So we'll have to see where that takes us. So circling back to you, what data do you want and how do you want to manage your cows? What kind of efficiencies do you need if you're working on training people and keeping them from drifting? As you use more hours in the day, then the cows per session per hour and milking time becomes more critical. But if you've got the genetics, the nutrition, and we're just not getting the milk extraction in the barn or in the parlor, and you hire an independent or the dealership comes by, how about a little data to see where the issues are? Robots, everybody knows that it's loaded with data. So what reports are you going to use as you're monitoring your current situation or setting up new goals? And so this is in kilograms, my apologies, but you can see that this farm here in third plus lactation is 66 pounds, and they've benchmarked against a group that's well over 90 pounds. So are they in the right group? Perhaps they should be benchmarking against someone different. Depending on your milk processing plant and where you're at, do you need to grow in milk shipment? Do we want to milk more cows? Do we want to get more milk per cow? So there are things called caps now in different regions of the US, and you do have to speak to your milk processing plant before you necessarily can produce more. And yeah, as there's caps, then do we want more product from less cows? And what does that mean in milk production per cow? Visits per day, milking the right cow at the right time. And yeah, we no longer have time or a place for slow milking cows that maybe were in the old tie stall or in the old parlor. You brought them in last, left the milkers on. Efficiencies now are the name of the game. So in summary, you have many choices to start. So to start with, what do you want? And even though robotics are a buzzword, I do suggest that you spend time with people that are really happy and even go talk to people that left or sold, like Larry said, because it's a big investment and you want to make sure that it's right for you. These swing parlors, if you like to milk cows, if you've got people to milk cows and you don't have the capital costs, they're highly effective. And if you're in that 750 to 1,000 cow range, do you want to stay there? Again, these double 16s, double 20s on a stall basis, they are equal to the rotary, but then your footprint on the building that they go in starts to increase with the rotaries. So with the rotaries, we're really looking at typically in Western US with expansion, as I said, a few in the East. Hey, I just want to milk them fast and get on to my next task in the day. I believe you all deserve data, and you need to work with people to turn that data into information and then help you be more efficient in your daily tasks. Technology is nothing without good mission statements, cultures on these farms. This was at NMC 2 weeks ago. Funny enough, from a farm that I grew up fairly close to. And I love this mission statement. We all have to remember we're producing a wholesome and a nutritious product. And the consumer no longer is asking us nicely. It's a demand, no questions asked, working hard every day to meet the needs of every cow. The next thing is a lot of people have a lot of choices of where they can work. So how do we encourage and foster the growth and development of our employees? Water, soil are the basis of where we start. So how do we take care of that? And lastly, as more and more people are now grandparents and great-grandparents having been on the farm, how are we positive contributors to the community, so that in the case with this farm, when they wanted to put in a new manure storage, they could call on those positive experiences with the neighbors, with the community, and get that manure storage permit in place. We are caretakers of calves and cows. It all starts with clean, comfortable, dry housing. And, if you're going to do a retrofit or an upgrade, let's just make sure that the cows coming out of the gates are going to be healthy to hit that milk production that you need. And last but not least, we can't do this without passionate people. So thank you for everything that you do. Keep up the hard work. There'll be tough days out there, but we do need your passion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nancy. You brought up some very interesting points, as well as Larry. And before we jump to the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that next week, February 21st, is going to be our last session of the Technology Tuesday webinar series. And we are going to have Mark Reynolds from ASAP Interiors talking about integrated barn climate systems. And after this session on February 28th, we are going to have all the past and current webinars recorded and uploaded to our ProDairy website. So with that, I just want to say, Katie, if you want to jump in and run the Q&A for us. I saw some questions coming, so thank you.
Sure. Actually, we have some excellent questions, Camilla. And Dr. Tranel is kind enough to go through and answer a bunch of them right online in the other Q&A session. So if folks want to read along with those, that's great. We are going to answer a few of them live here so that Dr. Charlton has a chance to kind of add her thoughts, as well as there are a few that we didn't get to. So I'm going to try to group the questions together, Dr. Tranel and Dr. Charlton, so that we can maybe cover a few of the topics at a time. So the first one I thought we could address is the one about the data. So this is, I'm grouping three questions together, but one of the questions was, what do you see going on in the industry to increase digital literacy among farmers? The other was about ownership of data, and I think that was directed more towards you, Dr. Charlton. And then the other was, is there any data that you get with these robotic systems that you can't get with just a modern parlor? So if either one of you would like to jump in and address that sort of three-part question on data, that'd be great.
I'll let you start. I think there's kind of one of them was directed towards you.
Yeah. So the one thing with our robot is we have quarter level data, which typically doesn't happen in parlors or rotaries. And so things such as, in particular, conductivity, then actually plays a more influential role. Conductivity is highly controversial. And as a veterinarian, I've studied it it's not conductivity's fault. It's just the way the cow's udder is. But I would say at a quarter level, we can start to do a little more, respond a little quicker compared to parlor. No system is perfect, but I like the quarter level information. Sorry, I'm focused on it. What was another aspect of that? Oh, data ownership was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tangly question. It was asked at NMC. So dairy farmers, yes, when the data comes onto your farm, what you see in the computer belongs to you, and you have the ability to say yes to whoever sits in front of it, that they can have access to it. So we have Delpro. So if you want to do a dump into an Excel sheet, stick it on their USB stick and send them on their way, that is your right. But you do click a terms and agreement when you load software. The lawyers write that up. There is other stuff that is specific to the hardware that the companies have invested millions of dollars to create. And so that's where there may be a difference of opinion as to who is allowed to get access to that data. But typically it's not user facing at the computer. So I don't know if that helps the farmer or the person who asked, but the data is yours that you're working with, in our case in Delpro. Anybody that comes along that would like to use it, you can share it with them.
Okay, great. And then the other part of that question was, what do you see in the see as far as efforts to increase digital literacy among producers?
I think as the next generations come up through the ranks, they will osmotically, or they will have more. It's just because it's in everything you do, whether it's you go to the bank or you're on a plane or many different places. And it's difficult for those groups of people that didn't grow up in it. I know at our company, we are working on creating online resources to work with our equipment and to work with our software. But we need to partner up with everyone in the dairy community whenever we have a chance to help support trainings. I say, well, we have online trainings, but that's a whole new world for some of our clients. COVID, maybe if there was a positive, forced a lot of people into the digital world. But I do know everybody is happy to get back to in person, but in that forcing, you've had to use a computer some more. There's no easy answer to it. We all need to explore ways of how can we train our clients.
Okay. Dr. Tranel, do you have anything to add there?
No, just maybe the different companies may have a different thought process on who owns the data in different aspects. So maybe
and then Dr. Charlton, this question seems focused for you. Based on the data on existing farms, which is the number of milkings, is it possible to manage with the batch milking system? So I didn't read that very clearly. Based on the data on existing farms, what is the number of milkings that is possible to manage with the batch milking systems? Is 3 the max?
So far, but
Okay.
we only have an N of 1 in the US. So I'm sure somebody may push that, trying to have fresher cows milked 4 times a day. But it's all logistics and group sizes. And one thing I have learned is sometimes the simpler is better, because simple done well will trump complicated drifting any day.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm just going to switch to the questions that were more about some of the data that you presented, Dr. Tranel, on the economics and the factors associated with robotic farms. So one person asked, how was labor costs determined for the robot farms? Free flow, direct flow? Talking with many robot farms, there's virtually no savings on labor. At best, farms are just preparing labor with the prepaying labor with the purchase of a robot. And that's a common question. People say that they didn't really get the labor savings that they thought they would. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so some say they do, some say they don't. So
Yeah.
I guess that can go back to go with both those surveys. And so those producers, there were some free flow. They were all different brands of robots. Some were guided flow, but it's basically kind of using the data that they actually brought back to us in both 2012 and also 2017. And when we're presenting the data within the spreadsheet, that partial budget, we will tend to use the data of what the producer thinks is going to happen. So I can share the survey data, but it's kind of on the producer to kind of give us a good estimate about what they're working with. And so it's based on past experience of their friends, their neighbors, with the surveys that we have, our personal experiences, but that data can come from, because some really do save a lot of labor. And I realize a lot of people say they don't, but the question becomes, what are they using that extra labor for? Okay, so I still say that a lot of them are saving it on the milking phase and also the fetching phase. but they're using that labor maybe to sit at the computer more, to manage their herds better, and things like that. So that labor is getting utilized, but it may not be solely for still milking and fetching.
Sure. And then another question came in asking, so the milk increase that gets reported sometimes for robotic farms, how much is that from the robots and how much is that in an improved facility and of the for the animals and, you know, the more the cow comfort, feed bunk space, that sort of thing. So do you guys have a feel for what that breakout might be?
Yeah, so the research will show that 3 to 5% is pretty much a given, I think, for the most part. But we have seen herds that were 3x going to robots that might have actually decreased a little bit. Those are few and far between. Our surveys would actually show somewhere between a 10 to 17% increase. So we will for sure give at least 3 to 5% of that. I will tend to give 6 to 8% if it's a 10% increase to the building, because we know that just about any time we build a new facility for somebody, we're going to correct a lot of things, and we'll almost guarantee them a 6 to 8% increase in milk production just by building a new freestyle barn that's up to spec with good ventilation, sand bedding, just all the cow comfort things that we're working with. But the ones that built new in the Iowa survey anyway, they were actually up to a 17% increase. So from there, and I mentioned also there was one producer that had probably a 25 to 32% increase that did not change any facilities whatsoever, only put the robot in there. So it's anybody's guess, I tend to think, where that the rest of that gets credited to. So it could go to the robot, it could go to the facility. And Nancy, you've got a comment there too.
Yeah, I guess I would, retrofits are the best examples of where the robot can help, and it's all over the map. Some farms do go up. I don't have the percent, so I'll lean on Larry. But one thing I do wonder is, once you have data and you can see your low-hanging fruit and or attachment issues, one way to get increases is to clean out your bottom end. So again, having data and seeing it and taking action may help some of these farms, especially in the first year, if they're super keen and they're cleaning things out. But then they've got to have the management to have the replacements come up and support them. So you just have to look at what your goals are, what you want to do, and you have to be open and willing to change. At least hear people out and be aware of what's going on in your farm that's holding you back.
Okay, and then just for a couple of more questions, I sort of look at aging robots. One is on the maintenance cost. So it says maintenance costs would likely be higher after the first 7 years and when the debt has been paid off. So they're looking just for some idea of what you might want to think about as far as maintenance costs for an older robot.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of the robots. I mean, we'd have to go back into another survey for those that are actually getting that old, because when we did that survey, most of the robots were 7 years old or younger. Okay, so if that's $7,000 on average, and again, you saw the big range of anywhere from $3,000 a year per robot up to 16. So there's a huge range of people with what happens to the robots, just their ability to prevent the issues from happening, doing some of the work themselves versus getting calls and you're 3 to 4 hours away from the dealer. That's definitely happened in a few instances as well. But as important as that repair, I'm not going to probably give if I was going to be guessing, I'd probably be in that 9 to 12,000, maybe in those latter years. The one I saw in Spain was actually in that $25,000 a year. So he really needed to do something quick, because they were really, it was kind of the early versions of some of the robots as well. But as important, that sometimes doesn't get put into it. So you look at the repairs over the course of that time, but just what the cost of labor. So what I want people to do is actually take an average cost of labor across the whole time frame. And so we should do the same thing with repair costs, is that repair cost should be an average annual cost across the whole 15 years or whatever time frame we're actually working with this. And I do realize that, when you take a look at just the length of the robot life, I mean, some people are still promoting it at 20 years. I'm kind of questioning that a little bit. I've got it at 15. A couple of years ago, we'd be putting it at 13 to 15, even up to 17. So that years of useful life, technology changes very quickly, as we've been seeing just even with the robots. And so what's its value going to be in that 12 to 15 year time period?
Okay, great. So, I think we'll finish up
Nancy
there.
had a comment there too, but
Yeah, sure. Dr. Charlton, did you want to have something to add?
Yeah, so as no numbers and non-techie, what I would say is look at your operation now. How are you on tractor maintenance? How are you on manure scraper maintenance? What is maintenance like for you? Is it something that you're on top of? You listen to the dealership that you've bought it from, or do you like to cheat? Do you like to cut corners? So I'd like to go after the behavioral aspect of it. I've walked onto farms and looked at a robot, and it's like, well, I know it's not yesterday's robot, but it sure does look like it. And then I've walked onto farms, and it's like, when did they put this robot in? Oh, just last year. So, and air quality, water quality, how good are you at the checklist? And then again, you're going to have to interview your dealer and see what they say and what they find. So that's a social science behind it, and I think it's extremely important.
Great. Okay, so I think we'll finish up there with the questions, the Q&A session. And I'll hand it back over to you, Camilla.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And I would like to thank you, Dr. Nancy Charlton and Dr. Larry Tranel, for being here with us today and answering all the questions and for the great presentations. And thank you everyone who stayed with us until now, and hope to see you next week. And I also want just to thank again our sponsors that made this series possible at no cost for our participants. So with that, we are all set. And thank you very much. You guys have a great week.
thanks.
Thank you. All the best.